in the organizing community in general, there is a concept that has trickled down since the 1970s that Saul Alinsky discovered organizing in South Chicago. But that's like Columbus discovering Plymouth Rock. The truth is that tribal nations have been organizing since dirt, since our very beginnings. There's no other way to explain how we as peoples, over 500 tribes, many languages, many traditional ways, there's no other way to explain why we have continued to not only exist, but to grow and to become even more grounded in our traditional ways in the 21st century. So if you want to be effective as an organizer, then you have to understand and find a path for how we use our greatest strengths, our traditional stories, our spiritual, our value system, in order to bring our community together to make change possible, transformational policy changes, and to look at the structural reforms that are necessary in order for us to achieve sovereignty. In each community, there are always people who respond to crises. There are tribal leaders who understand the historic mission of regaining and moving towards sovereignty. But it takes a lot. You can't only rely on values and good intentions. You have to have skills. I have been really blessed to come into this work, being the executive director of Native Organizers Alliance, the year before Standing Rock happened. A Standing Rock was a gathering of hundreds of nations. The largest number of nations came together in support of the sovereign right of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe to protect their water supply, to say no to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And what exploded there was an amazing gathering of urban and reservation Indians, 10,000 plus strong, who for many months sat together and exercised their power through direct action and the building of really a platform to express how our traditional teachings and our relationship to the natural world is a guide for the 21st century. When I was there on the ground, there were times, especially in September and October, where almost every day at sunset, when it's golden, I would find myself in the camp with many teepees. There were many tribes that had their own camps, and it was the first time that the Osheti-Shikoni tribes had come together since the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And so each tribal nation had their own camps serving delicious foods, some foods I'd never had before. But I would find myself at that time of sunset thinking, oh my goodness, I feel so at peace. I feel so whole. I could hear music and drums coming from many different directions. I could hear children laughing and dogs, running with dogs. I could see the children playing with the horses. And of course, the basketball court. That's our favorite sport, b-ball. But I also could feel this sense of a renewal of understanding of what our critical role is in the 21st century. Now, the truth is that feeling of wholeness is a reflection of the entire political moment, not just in Indian country, because Standing Rock would not have happened had not Black Lives Matter, the Fight for 15, the fast food workers who were taking the Dreamers. All of these movements were in a flow, were creating new norms of social struggle, how to raise our voices, how to show our power, our collective power. So it was our opportunity. When the Dakota Access Pipeline was proposed and the tribe needed our support, it was our opportunity to stand in that flow of mass movements who had to take a stand that perhaps might be unpopular, but would wake up and interrupt the dominant narrative of what kinds of structural reforms are needed in the 21st century, but also the dominant narrative of who Native people are. So that sense of wholeness for urban Indians and res Indians, I'm an urban Indian. I walk with a high heel on one foot and a moccasin on the other. But for all of us, we felt what sovereignty could look like, how we can work together, how we can actually, if organized, exert our political power. That
And
was
I
an
love that.
important lesson for me.
Yeah. I love that story, and I love the idea that a lot of these different movements by different groups that can seem siloed, exercising their power, exercising their voice, making a case for who the justice system serves or who the systems in power serve. I love the idea that they're all connected and can inspire each other and live together to move us in a better direction. That's a
And
really
you know,
incredible way, I think, of thinking about it.
and I think for all of the movements that I lifted up that are a part of this bigger desire for the majority to live a better life, these movements in the US ignited global awareness, ignited global movement. When you just look at Standing Rock alone, we had demonstrations in solidarity with us in Okinawa, in France. There were international delegations from the West Bank and Gaza, from Iraq. So I think the way that we conceptualize power building in the 21st century has to be with an Indigenous framework, which is that we are all in relation. Everything that we do in our own communities has an impact far beyond the immediate. This is a fundamental Indigenous framework, the time continuum. So, therefore, those things in the past, what we hope for the future, is only one place where they come together, and that's in the present. So, what we do matters, because what will our descendants say about what we did in this moment of climate crisis? When they look back 30 years from now, what did our elders do? What did our ancestors do? So, we have to be guided by what we can bring forward from the past and connected to that horizon goal that we have for saving Mother Earth, for engaging in political power building that can guarantee that we all have a decent life going forward. And I think an Indigenous framework is it's so necessary in the 21st century because if we all understand where did we come from, where are we going, so therefore, what is my responsibility in this moment? We'd have different government policies if our elected officials looked at natural disasters that way. If our elected officials or our community leaders said, let's have a discussion about a development project. Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is right for us right now in this community? We are working in 5 of the 7 battleground states to collect data. And this Indigenous Future Survey is the only Indian survey of Indians, period, full stop. Much the government academics have often considered natives as statistically insignificant. So it wasn't until last year under the Biden administration that the Labor Department began collecting unemployment statistics in Indian communities. They had never collected unemployment statistics. They're collecting them now. They haven't released them, but one step. But this Indigenous Future Survey, we initiated it in 2020 to start rattling those cages to get people thinking about the political significance and role of Native communities, tribal nations. And it showed in 2020, we were the decisive vote that swung things. The exact number of Navajo who voted was the exact number, almost the exact number of votes that Biden got. And that was a slim victory. This survey is a survey of what are the key issues confronting our communities? What is the experience when trying to exercise the right to vote? Identity questions, how people see themselves in the larger society. And so this is the 3rd year, but this interesting statistic, I went into a rabbit hole and now I'm coming out of it. The most interesting statistic that we have collected is that over 80% of Native people who say they vote, they look at the voting record or the platform of the candidate. That blew me away. Many of the other statistics that we collected, they conform to our experiences on the ground. But that that really made me think there's such an untapped reservoir of political power, because political power is built in between elections. 2020 elections, it was just a snapshot of native grassroots political power. It's a snapshot of all of our political power. Elections don't change things, they only change the conditions in which we're working. And our people now on the ground in 2023 understand 2024 as being a critical year to reflect all the power and organizing and mobilizing that we've done around issues, to reflect that in the electoral arena. And I think the statistics that you all will see in the turnout will prove that. Because, as I said, Mrs. Biden and Deb were up in Menominee. Well, Menominee, we worked there on the ground with 13 moccasins who were doing voter engagement and GOTV. It was the most infectious place in Wisconsin, Menominee County. There was a 26% increase in turnout from the last national election.
Wow.
So our people risked their lives to organize the vote and mobilize it. And what was the outcome? We pressed right away for the nomination of Deb, the historic breakthrough of having a First Native in the cabinet. And it wasn't smooth sailing. The political leadership was not for it in the transition team. But we organized grassroots pressure. 19,000 people signed a petition within 2 weeks of the transition team being established, and over 200 tribes sent letters supporting Deb. And so we won that struggle, and it has proven to be a structural reform that has created the conditions for structural reforms that cannot be turned back no matter who's in the White House when it comes to governance, land and water management. There's over 60 co-management projects now underway that did not exist between tribal nations and federal agencies. And so I just have such good feelings about the work we're doing, because it has impact, because it has changed federal policies from the grassroots level.
Yeah. And for anyone in the audience not familiar, I think you're referring to Deb Haaland, Secretary of the Interior.
The first Native woman to head up the Department of Interior.
Yeah,
the most
which was
important department in the government for us.
And a
It
major
oversees,
milestone.
yep, the Department of Interior oversees governance, natural resources, education, healthcare. It is our department. I love the fact that Giving Compass invited me to talk about this work. But I think it is crucial for philanthropy to be inclusive, get guidance from the people who know. Do not parachute into a community and then cherry pick who you're going to fund. That's not going to work. You know why? Because it causes friction. It causes competition in a situation where less than 1% of all philanthropy goes to Indian country. There's fierce competition. Our approach is that we lift up groups like Illuminative or Advanced Native Political Leadership, our candidates training and campaign preparation group, co-founded by Peggy Flanagan, the Minnesota State Attorney General, the only statewide Native officer at this stage. But we're trying to lift up all the groups who are moving with a grassroots political power approach. And you need to consult us. We're more than willing. I know that the Ford Foundation has been going through a process. There's a number of big foundations that are, but we need more of it. Because in order for the funding to be effective, you need people from the ground to give you an assessment of how your investment will and can help.
A lot of the folks listening are aspiring philanthropists. They're folks who want to do more, and they're hopefully using this opportunity with an amazing leader like yourself to learn more about how they can do that. But do you have any advice for that person out there thinking about their philanthropy, thinking about Native organizing and not only what it needs now in its current form, but what it might need 5 years from now, and any advice to share on how they can support that? Just think about their own giving back.
I think that people who are aspiring to be or are currently involved in philanthropy, that you have to think big. You have to think horizon. That's what we're doing with this training center. We could continue to conduct trainings, and we do on reservations in urban Indian centers in regions, and then we do our national things. But we realize we have to look to the horizon. We have to create something that will stand the test of time and play a role in shaping the struggle for sovereignty. And if you begin to look at your life that way, what is your horizon goal? Where do you think humanity needs to go in order to achieve a truly multiracial democracy that is actually meeting the needs of community and expanding the possibilities for the way we live in a good way in balance with the natural world? I would also say, dig deep. What are your ancestors? What are their teachings? And I don't mean your grandpa or your grandma only. I consider Nelson Mandela one of my ancestors.
Mm.
So I understand that all of humankind, there's histories of how we've come back from terrible situations. Study those things and then look at the horizon and figure out what you can do in the present, how you'll walk in the present.
Thank you for everything that you and your team and your organization and community are doing.
Thank you.